Hello again, class. Today we are taking a look at something that happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I am, of course, talking about Star Wars. Now, given how long and expansive Star Wars has been around for, there's bound to be some creepy stories lurking in the vast lore of this universe. And that is what we are discussing today. For today, we are discussing the Blackwing Virus, otherwise known by its official name in the Imperial circles as Imperial Bioweapon Project 17A. Now, the Blackwing Virus is truly something horrifying to behold, as seen in the book Death Troopers, which if you haven't read, do so. It is fantastic. There's physical copies, ebooks, audiobooks out there. I'm sure you can find it. And just know that I will be getting into some minor spoilers, technically. Not so much about the plot of the book itself, but just simply the fact that the Blackwing virus is, in fact, in this book. So just know that. But don't worry, I won't be going over the plot or anything. That's for another video. Regardless, the Blackwing virus itself is originally made with sith alchemy, and it was activated by a strange orchid flower that was not only force sensitive of all things, but actually completely self-aware, like you or me. Unlike most plants that follow the basic definition of a living object, this one seemed to have complete and total consciousness. The virus itself was created by Darth Dreer 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, basically 4,000 years before the events of Episode 2. And also, because it is activated by this flower that is supposedly self-aware, it is heavily considered that the virus itself is also self-aware and actively wants itself to be spread as much as possible. Now, this virus wasn't exactly created to be that, a virus. In fact, it wasn't even really necessarily meant to be created as a weapon. Originally, the Sith wanted to create it as something that all Sith want: immortality. It wasn't meant to turn you into a shabbling corpse of the undead, but rather to make you live forever. However, this project failed and turned Darth Dreer into nothing more but a walking corpse. Now, thankfully, it didn't spread at all during this time, and it just completely stayed self-contained in said Sith. However, 1,000 years later, another Sith sought to succeed where Darth Dreer had failed, and his name was Darth Scabrous. He tried to recreate the virus, thinking surely he had just been a fool in the past and that he could create it. However, he also failed. But not only did it infect himself, but also every single Sith teacher and student that was in the academy he was studying in. And every single one of them was transformed into a shambling corpse of the undead. Now, thankfully, this stayed entirely self-contained on this planet, as we don't really hear anything else of this spreading any further than this planet, heavily implying that, kind of similar to perhaps 28 days later, eventually the infected do expire if lack of food or other self-sustaining resources are unavailable. However, this is not where the story of the virus ends. After another 3,000 years, Vader himself commissions a science team of the Empire to re-engineer the virus, this time as a weapon. Now, the side effects of the virus itself, before you turn that is, cause severe pain and hallucinations, and eventually leads to internal hemorrhaging in seizures, which kills you and then revives you as an undead monster. Now, how long it takes for the virus to turn somebody can slightly vary depending on the strain and how you're infected. A bite will turn you within seconds to, at most, a few minutes. Whereas things such as bodily fluids, such as getting infected blood in your mouth, nose, eyes, ears, etc., to also an airborne strain of the virus, because yes, there is a separate strain that is airborne, will sometimes buy you a bit more time and take longer, but it is still an inevitability that you will turn. It will just take slightly longer to do so. Eventually, the team that Vader assigned was able to completely and totally recreate the virus. But just before it could be deployed, an accident happened. And the virus that the Star Destroyer was stored on was released, infecting many of the crew almost instantly, and the rest being hunted down by the shambling corpses, leaving only a few survivors. Now, a few of you may be wondering, is there a cure? Is there any way to prevent this? Is there any escape from it? Well, there are a few ways. Antiviral injections, for example, have a possible chance of giving you minor immunity to the virus. However, it is not guaranteed, and it seems to only work some of the time and not always. And, of course, probably direct bites may not be able to be shielded against no matter how many antiviral injections you have, but could perhaps protect you against the airborne strain or things like infected bodily fluids. And there have been cases of people being immune to the airborne strain. It is rare, but there are people who are immune to the airborne strain. However, they are still susceptible to the strain that is transmitted through bites. Some last notes on the virus here, to truly tingle your spine about this monstrosity of a virus before I leave you, class, is that the virus can learn from its hosts. Sure, the infected start off as basically mindless, shambling corpses, basically something you would see out of the Walking Dead franchise. However, the longer the infected stay alive, the more they seem to be able to draw out the memories of the person they infected. If that person knew how to wield a blaster, the infected now does. If they knew how to wield a lightsaber, the infected now does. If they knew how to fly a ship, the infected now does. Not only that, but they can also eventually learn to avoid danger. They can hide in the shadows. They can lure you into traps. And not only that, but the virus itself has a hive mind. Meaning that if one spots you, any and all infected in the area know where you are. It's either all or nothing with these. You are either completely unspotted, completely hidden, or all of them know where you are. And that ability to learn is frightening. Sure, at first they start off as a shambling corpse, but then eventually you might have a zombie that knows how to use a blaster and fires at you. Now you have to worry about that. You have to worry about one learning how to pilot a ship from its host and possibly flying away to spread it to a nearby planet or another nearby ship or an incalculable number of other things. It is truly a virus that is horrifying to behold. And frankly, even for the Sith, even for the Empire, it genuinely should just be left alone. But that is all we have time for today. What did you think of the Blackwing Virus? Have you read the Death Troopers book? If you have, let me know what you think of it. Personally, I'm a pretty big fan. But until next time.